Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Community Circle. It's a virtual gathering here on YouTube. I'm glad you're here. It's an honor to be with you, as always. To everyone who's tuning in live, welcome to everyone who is watching the replay. If this is your first time on my channel, I invite you to subscribe. But let me see if I can point to it here. There it is. It's in the corner here. There's a copy of my logo. You can click that link there and that'll give you an opportunity to subscribe to the channel. And of course, if the material we're exploring today resonates with you, please do give it a thumbs up. It makes a big difference in terms of the YouTube algorithm and how this material is shared with other people. So grateful for the opportunity to connect with you today. Our theme this week and for today comes from a member of the community who sent in an email asking for more information about my process around surrender when I first surrendered back in June of 2011. And so we'll get to that here in a few minutes. Want to welcome Judy Clinton, who's checking in. Thanks to all for being here. She's saying from Iowa, wonderful to be with you. Thanks for saying hi, Judy. Glad you're here. It's an honor to be with you. And I'm honored to be with everyone. Rod Jans is checking in. Hey, Rod, great to see you. Glad you're here as well. Welcome to everyone. Anyone else who'd like to check in and say hi, I'll acknowledge you here in a few minutes once we get going. And of course, for those of you who are watching the replay, I'll be interacting with you through the comments as well. On the live stream, let me see if I can point to the play. I think it's over here. The comments are over here on the screen, and then on replay, they're down below. So either way, welcome the opportunity to interact with you. And if you have questions coming in about our topic for this week, or really anything showing up for you in the spiritual world, which from my perspective includes just about everything. So in fact, I can't think of a single thing that doesn't have, from my perspective, as its foundation, the spiritual. That is the underpinning from my perspective of everything. So whatever you feel like exploring, please do submit those questions and I'll attend to them. Before we do anything else, though, like we do every week, I'd love to gather in our circle on an energetic level and do a little bit of meditation to open our space together and to open into sacred space. As you know, when we're doing meditation together, it's a guided meditation. It's an opportunity to have that experience within yourself, of yourself and of the divine within. And then at the point when I say, let's begin, that's the point at which, if you're open to that, we're working together on a deeper level energetically. And probably the most simple way I can describe the way that the divine expresses through me is as a witness. That is to say, I'm seeing you. I believe it's a bold claim, but I believe it is true. I get to see others the way that the divine sees them. It's really extraordinary. Makes me cry a lot. Julie M is checking in. Julie, wonderful to be with you. Blessings to you as well. Glad you're here. Thanks so much for checking in and saying hi. Okay, before we do anything else, any more greetings, any more connecting, any more exploring with words, let's set it all aside now, energetically, emotionally, physically, and otherwise. As always, please don't operate a motor vehicle or heavy equipment of any sort during this or any time we're together. There are a couple of reasons for that. The biggest is that this is an opportunity for you to have a deeper experience of who you really are. And maybe that's something you've been resisting. Oh my gosh, what if I'm not a good person? Or maybe you think, I'm scared of how wonderful I really am, and I want to hold that at bay. Here's a chance for you to dip your toe into that experience and just support the creation of that space in your life. We come together for an hour, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more, usually once a week. Although I will say I won't be with you next week unless you'd like to be part of the deep dive retreat series, virtual retreat. I will be with the deep divers next week for deep dive 11 on Thursday, but there'll be no live stream next Wednesday. In any case, anytime we come together, it's a chance for you to open to that deeper experience of who you really are, of that innate connection that exists within all of us, of the divine by whatever name. And then there's another reason too, which is you never know when, and some people think they're going to sleep or falling out. There are lots of different ways over the years people have described this, but you just never know when you're going to sort of disconnect and go into a deep interior space. You may think you're like you stop hearing my voice, or as I say, many people think they're actually going to sleep. You never know when that'll happen. So if you're doing something else, especially if you're operating a motor vehicle, that's not safe. So please don't do that. And even more so, be open to this profound, beautiful experience of who you really are. All right. Let's together close our eyes if it's comfortable for you, breathing in and out through the nostrils, palms to the sky. Again, if all of this is comfortable for you, let's take a deep breath in and hold. And as you begin releasing this breath now, letting go of everything that has come before in this day, all the way out to the count of 8. And if you need something to focus on, you could just focus on the thoughts that have been dominant in your awareness today. Angelica checking in. It's wonderful to be with you as always, Angelica. Thank you for being here. Another deep breath in and hold. And as you begin releasing this breath now, letting go of everything that has come before since you were born, all the way out to the count of 8. And with this, the emotions that have been dominant lately in your awareness, if you want something to focus on, all the way out to the count of 8. And another deep breath in and hold. And as you begin releasing this breath now, letting go of everything that has come before since the inception of your soul, all the way out to the count of 8. And again, if you'd like something to focus on, you could focus on your dominant way of being that has been coming into your awareness or expressing through you lately, as far back as you'd like to go. And as we begin opening to a little bit of meditation together, the meditation we'll do is, I call it divine connecting breath. The default perspective is one of separation. That is to say, the experience or the belief that we are separate from ourselves, from one another, and perhaps most essentially the divine by whatever name. And in this meditation, we're shifting from that as the dominant perspective to the dominant perspective of our innate connection with ourselves, with one another, and with the divine. And it's just a simple guided meditation. If something doesn't resonate with you, I just invite you to release it, let it go, and stay with whatever your experience is as it unfolds. I believe the most important part of our time together and of your spiritual work is not, it actually has nothing to do with what I say or anything that I might teach you or any of that. I think the most important experience thing in our spiritual journey, any of us on the planet, is the experience that is unfolding. And of course, that experience is a phenomenally intimate and private one. It's just unfolding within you. And I really want to honor that. And I invite you to honor it as well, however it's unfolding for you. In your mind's eye, perhaps with your imagination or in your intuitive awareness, become aware of that cue of breath in front of your face. Many units of breath. Each time you breathe in, another unit replaces. And the breath comes in to serve and support you no matter what. Doesn't matter the color of your skin, your political beliefs, your gender or ethnic background, identity, sexual orientation. None of it matters. Political beliefs, what kind of person you've been today or in this life, how others have treated you. The breath is serving you fully, just as you are. And you may notice in that cue a color beginning to infuse itself throughout the cue. If you're assigning a color, I invite you to pick one or perhaps allow it to be a dynamic expression of colors that are not normally present in the body, except perhaps in the eyes. And if the color is presenting itself or it's dynamic and it just is, of course, be with it, whatever it is. And when you get ready to take in your next breath, be with that breath from the perspective of the color. So the breath is coming into the nostril and then up to the crown and then down into the lungs. And then if you sit in the lungs in your perspective, in your awareness, just notice how that color begins infusing itself through the lining of the lungs. And if you allow time to move forward very smoothly and gently, you'll notice that color is actually showing, it's illustrating the pathway for the breath. The breath comes into the lungs through the lining, and then into the bloodstream, and then into every cell in your body. And whether in your mind's eye, in your intuitive awareness on whatever level, just notice that color eventually has infused itself through the entirety of your being, your physical body. Every cell is imbued with that color. And there's this very simple conclusion we can draw, or statement we can make around this. And I'm going to make it here in just a moment. And when I do, just be aware of what, if any, sensations come up in the body or in your intuitive awareness, or what you see or sense or know in response to this statement. And here it is. The breath is becoming you, and you are becoming the breath. I don't know if you can feel it or see it, sense it in whatever ways you're aware. That yes comes back. And notice it might come back intellectually. Well, sure, breath, oxygen, lungs, bloodstream, cell. Yep, makes sense. You might see it, hear it, know it, feel it. Many different ways that you can become aware of that resonance, that your body saying yes to the statement. The breath is becoming you, and you are becoming the breath. There it is again, like this wonderful wave of resonance moving throughout your field and perhaps even in your body. And if you're feeling nothing here, it's fine. You're not doing anything wrong. Just be with your experience, whatever it is. And then when you're ready, I invite you to shift your perspective from inside the lungs or noticing throughout the body to begin noticing the breath of the planet. So the perspective may have moved far beyond your individual perspective. Maybe you're out in space looking at the breath of the planet, or perhaps a little bit closer and can see the breath of the planet is serving you and your individual cue of breath. And of course, That's true for your neighbor and your neighbor's neighbor. And so you can see everyone is being served by the breath of the planet, literally every single person. And so we can make another statement. With each breath, you are connected to everyone by your breath. And we could take it a step further. It's not just people, the breath is serving everything: animals, insects, trees, grass, dirt, rocks, water, fish, everything. And so we could say with each breath, you are connected to everyone and everything. And you may even become aware eventually of breathing by and for and of the planet itself. And then at some point, notice how the breath of the planet becomes the breath of the cosmos. And with each breath, then, you are connected to everyone and everything throughout all of creation, including that energy that underwrites everything else. The divine, a light perhaps originating on the other side of the cosmos, even. And notice as that light draws closer with each breath that you draw in, eventually it draws close enough that you can perceive the twin frequencies that together create and comprise this light. The frequency of the divine itself, the frequency of perfect health, intertwined such that there is no separating one from the other. Where one is present, so too the other. Where the light is, these two are. And the light, as you may see and sense and know and feel, is everywhere, eventually connecting in perhaps initially at your nostrils and then instantaneously throughout every level of your being, known and unknown. The invitation extended to each of the smallest aspects of you, the invitation to return to your natural state of resonance and alignment, the artifacts of dissonance appearing to fall away and gather at the universal drain. For whatever remains in separation, I invite you to remove the universal plug. I'll do the same as we observe the appearance of the divine becoming you, and you are becoming the divine, as if there were a transformation in the works right now. Yet truly, what is being uncovered and experienced here within you now is a truth that has always existed, but perhaps not as clearly or as viscerally experienced as it is in this moment. The divine is becoming you, and you are becoming the divine. The river is flowing. Let's begin. So much to say. It's a fascinating, exciting, energizing topic to me to be exploring surrender with you today. Further exploration of surrender. I know we've explored surrender many times. It comes from a member of the community who wrote an email in response to a From My Heart. I don't remember which one she was responding to. I guess I could look and see. I've got her email set up right here. I think it was last week's From My Heart. She writes and says, I've asked about this before, but wanted to go a bit deeper. I'm still curious about your conscious choice to surrender way back when with your friend as witness. I'm curious. I know you literally set the date, but then what? Did you just show up on time and go into meditation or start to feel your feelings? What exactly happened that triggered such a deep transformation? I guess the question is, how did you just surrender then and there? What did you do? It's a great question. And I want to see if I can't dig up the experience a little bit more and live it with you so that I might answer this more completely. As I reflected earlier today in my From My Heart email that I sent out, and by the way, if you're not currently receiving email from me, you can sign up for that. It's free, of course, at kenwstone.com/newsletter. There's a link in the description on YouTube as well. You can just scroll through the description and click the link and put your name and email address in. Make sure you grant permission for me to email you. That assures compliance with the GDPR, I think is what it's called. And it just will ensure that the email can get through to you. In any case, as I reflected in my From My Heart earlier today, one of the limitations with trying to explore this with you, or at least a limitation that I perceive, is that my experience is my experience of surrender. Doesn't mean it necessarily will be your experience of it. And indeed, the things that I might reflect on about my process around surrender, they may not resonate at all with you. The part of each of us that is surrendering or is getting ready to surrender or resisting surrender, wherever you're at in that journey, is the separate self. It's not the whole self. And so the separate self has its own agenda. It expresses in stage one consciousness as an agenda around trying to secure safety. That's the disempowered separate self. The empowered separate self in stage two is trying to create the life of its dreams. It's a very compelling opportunity, and to explore the efficacy of personal power and the personal mastery and so on is quite extraordinary. And at some point, we all run into the glass ceiling of stage two consciousness, meaning the limits of what can be controlled or experienced through personal power. And we all come to that realization in our own good time. It doesn't really matter what I have to say about it. It doesn't matter what anyone has to say about it. I can remember people saying to me, reflecting a deep truth that I knew was true. That is to say, the pathway forward, the end of your suffering, Ken, is to surrender completely. I knew it. Heck, I was teaching it, but living it, embodying that truth is something very, very different, of course. Okay, so let me see if I can't get to the experience a little bit here and dig it up. So I'm just going to pull up the email again and read it just so I can stay on point. I know you literally set the date. That's true. The date was the 30th of June, 2011. But what then? Okay, so I'm a bit of a literalist, so I'm going to tell you what I did then, and this probably speaks to my process of surrender at a deep, deep level, probably much deeper than I would care to acknowledge or recognize. There may be some vulnerability here in the way that I'm wired and the way I like to process information, but I blocked the time in my schedule. The 30th of June, 2011. I think was the first day either that I was willing to entertain this. It was about 10 days away when I scheduled it, but I know that I had nothing scheduled on that day. It was a Thursday. I had absolutely nothing scheduled, and I did ask a friend of mine to witness me. I made her agree. I didn't make her. I asked her. I wasn't willing to have her be involved or participate unless she was willing to make an agreement with me that she would not intervene no matter what. And I was very clear about the no matter what. And I really asked her to honor this deeply. So one of the fears of my empowered separate self, and I really believe that that's the part in each of us that lets go of control. It's not the whole self. Whole self is already completely surrendered. The whole self is having that innate connection with divinity, that innate connection with God, however we experience it, however we encounter it. The whole self is there in its entirety. It's the separate self, which I really believe is an expression of the whole self, but held in separation. It's the pathway to integration. It's part of what I perceive as the gift of the illusion of separation and so on. We can go more into this if you want to explore it further. But the answer to the question is, I literally blocked the time in my calendar, and then I asked this friend to witness me. I asked if I could come over to her place because she had a place out in the middle of the country. I had no idea what was going to happen. And one of the things that I asked her to commit to, because this was a very real possibility from the perspective of my separate self, the one who was surrendering, was I said to her, if I appear to die or actually die, drop the body, physically stop breathing and, I don't know, expire, I'm asking you not to revive me. It doesn't matter what noises I make. It doesn't matter what I go through. I'm asking you simply to witness me, but don't do anything for me or to me or with me. Don't participate in the process. Don't try to change what's happening. Just be a witness. And she agreed. And so on that day, I think I must have scheduled a very specific time, and I drove over to her place, and she asked me the same question, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. But I asked if she could sit across the room, and if I could have, I think it was a couch or a sofa of some sort. And I asked if I could sit there. And I mean, the truth is that I've been resisting this experience of complete surrender for a long, long time. It wasn't like it was, some idea that I had and I thought, oh, well, yeah, I'll just take care of that next week. It was more, I had been grappling with this for years, decades really, but consciously aware of it for years. And it really came down to one core lesson for me. I thought it was two things, but eventually, probably in February, maybe in March of 2011, I began to realize there aren't two things here, there are one. The two things that I thought there were something to do with money and something to do with self-love. And I started realizing that I was looking at money as an expression of love. Okay, that made sense. And it makes a lot more sense to me now, because I realize money is actually just a consciousness amplifier. In other words, how I perceive money, how you perceive money, is an amplifier of the stage of consciousness that you're in. So in stage one, it might exacerbate a sense of a lack of safety, or money might be the source of evil, or it might be the source of good things. There might be these polarities around it. In stage two, perhaps money is the thing to be made manifest to facilitate the expression of the dream. In stage three, money, like everything, becomes an undistorted expression of divine presence. It's not really individuated in this sense. You wouldn't look at money or the energy of money and say, oh, well, that has this signature, and perfect health has this signature. All of it, all of creation has the signature of the undistorted expression of divinity. And in stage three, we start seeing that veil lift, right? As the illusion of separation integrates, as the separate self surrenders, and so on. All right, so that's just a footnote, right? So I didn't have that awareness in 2011. I'm just giving you sort of footnotes of awareness in the meantime. But what I did realize was that self-love was the key for me. That's what I was surrendering. And when I thought about surrender, the thing I was resisting for, months ahead of time, really years, but it was like the throes of struggle and suffering on an entirely different level for me. What my separate self was doing was projecting, well, if you turn your life over to God, what does that mean, Ken? Oh, well, here's my separate self's voice saying, well, you're going to die. God's going to call you home. If you're not in charge, that's going to lead to death. And so the pre-work, if you will, to the actual day of surrender was I started actually visualizing my own death. I started thinking, okay, if I die, is that an okay outcome? Like, do I need to try to control that? And I started realizing, okay, if I die, if that's God's plan for my life is my death, that would be very, very sad for me. My girls were young at the time. It's not that they're old now. Emma, as we're on this session in this community meeting right now, Emma is 18 years old, off to college here in the next month or so. Riley is starting, such as it is, her sophomore year in high school. But this was back, this is 2020 now. This is 2011, 9 years ago. So you can back their ages up accordingly. And so they were young, and I thought, oh my gosh, what would happen if they grew up and I wasn't in their life? And I just sat with that. I just started visualizing, okay, surrender means I'm going to die, and I'm going to be okay with that. And that was my pre-work. That wasn't what I was doing the day of surrender. That was my pre-work. When I accepted all the things that I'm going to describe to you, and I'm not going to bore you with all the things. I'm just going to try to pick out a few things that were especially compelling and sources of a great deal of fear to me at the time. Uh, Not seeing my kids was a huge one. Um, Not being able to continue with spiritual work. I had been a mortgage lender. I'd left mortgage lending behind only months earlier. I'd originated my last loan at the end of 2010, and I felt called to make my living in the spiritual world as a spiritual messenger, as a healer at the time, is I think how I sort of thought of myself and how I offered my services. And I thought, I mean, this is so extraordinary. What if I have to go back into banking? What if I have to go dig ditches? And so the pre-work was, okay, fine. God takes me into a ditch and I'm going to dig ditches for the rest of my life. God puts me back into a bank and I never think about or get to do this spiritual work ever again. These were huge fears and sources of tremendous upset, major resistance. Separate self was projecting, all this nightmare stuff. Stay in control. If you stay in control, you can do spirituality. If you give your life to God, who knows? Maybe you'll die. Maybe you'll be stuck in banking. Maybe um, you won't see your kids again. Here was another fear. What if I'm become an itinerant healer? I climb in my car and I just travel around. I don't have a home, and I'm just doing healing work. And I mean, I don't know. Am I in where in the Americas am I? What if I never see my kids? You can see there's a theme there around that. That was a big fear of mine. Here was another fear. What if I become homeless? It was not a remote possibility. I had very little money. I was really struggling to make ends meet. I felt guided to pursue spiritual work. I'd left mortgage lending behind. There weren't crickets, but close to it. I had started doing virtual session work in the fall of 2010 over the internet, facilitating group sessions. And it just seemed like there was all this wonderful momentum. All these people were expressing interest in working with me one-on-one. And then all of a sudden, when I was to make my living in that way, they just disappeared. I realized later, because I related money to love, this was kind of the underlying energy of it. Somebody would say, hey, I'm interested in working with you. And what would come up for me, I didn't say it this way, but this is the underlying energy was, oh, you love me? You really love me? It's funny now. It wasn't funny then at all. It was really upsetting to me. Lots of screaming at God. What are you doing to me? I'm following guidance. I don't want to be homeless. So that was a fear. Oh, look, there were a lot of fears. And so in each of the cases of these fears, rather than resisting them, I visualized the fear. And I didn't just visualize it as a possibility. I visualized it as reality. I will be homeless. I will die. I will be an itinerant healer. I will be a mortgage lender. I will be a banker. I will dig ditches. I will never see my kids again. I will. And I didn't just play it out at one level. For example, I will be homeless. Then I thought, well, what's my next fear? This took me a long time. It wasn't just this kind of exercise. I thought, well, what I'm going to be cold. Oh, but I've got boots that keep me warm. I thought, okay, I got to make a list. When I'm homeless, I got to make sure that I have my warm stuff with me in a bag so I'm not cold. Then my next fear, well, what if I'm hungry? And I thought, well, there are a lot of restaurants around here. They probably throw food away. That's not going to be a problem. So I just worked through it. Then where am I going to stay and stay out of the weather? And I thought, well, there's an underpass. There are a number of underpasses here. Rivers go underneath them and so on. And I'm sure I can find a place there. So I just worked through the things that I was afraid of until I could just accept if God wants me to be homeless, live under a bridge, and carry a sack with with my boots and my gloves and whatever, so I can stay warm in the winter and so on, then that's what I'm going to do. I will do whatever God leads me to do. And I had no idea what God was going to lead me to do. I thought I knew, but I thought I was supposed to leave mortgage lending. And then I thought everything was going to work out, and it wasn't working out. I was, as I say, on the verge of being homeless. So on the day when I began surrendering, it was a process of consciously having a dialogue with God and with every part of myself, all those aspects of my separate self that had been projecting all these fears that I'd already effectively worked through and projected those things not as possibilities, but as reality. the process of surrender for me then was a process of consciously taking each part of my life and handing it over to God. Okay, God, you're in charge of this. And if you want to think of this, one of the metaphors that was very compelling to me at the time, and it still resonates with me at a deep level. If being in charge of my life is driving the bus, for that detail in my life, the thing I thought I needed to control, I would consciously stand up. Of course, I'm talking about this like it's a literal bus that I'm driving. I mean it metaphorically. I'm driving the bus of my life. I'm in charge. I'm steering where it's going. I would stand up. This is part of the process of surrender. I would stand up and I would walk to the back of the bus. Even as the bus would appear to be careening off a cliff or going into a cliff face or whatever, the visuals that were going on. This was entirely internal. The noises I was making, I think I probably sounded like I was, some sort of animal giving birth and dying or something. I have no idea. I'm relieved there's no recording of it. I think it'd be horrifying to listen to. It'd probably be very upsetting to other people. It'd probably bring up a lot of emotion for me. I went on like this for maybe 3 hours, two hours, something like that. And I kind of came to a point and I thought, oh, thank God. I think this is done. And then it was like, nope, that was just the preview. And then I plunged into this even deeper experience. And at that point, the visuals that I'm getting right now, and I think this is really congruent with the experience I had at the time, it was like being pulled underwater and drowning. And I thought, no, I have to be able to breathe. And then being squeezed through like this, I have a needle or something. I don't even know what other imagery to tell you. And as I was being squeezed through, I remember the feeling, if I hold on to any baggage, I'm going to get stuck and I will die. So, I mean, it was physically excruciating. It was, I mean, I don't want to over dramatize it. I'm just telling you, it was the most excruciating experience I'd ever been through in my life. And not just emotionally, it was physically excruciating. It was absolutely beyond anything I could have ever imagined. And I want to pause here and come back to the questions because I want to try to stay on point. My gosh, I'm using up all this time. I hope this is of interest. I trust in some way I'm serving. It's sort of difficult for me to get into personal narrative because I worry that it doesn't really serve. It feels awfully self-indulgent to me. Literally set the date. I think I am answering these questions. How did I just surrender? Yeah, what did I do? Okay, so I think I am. So in this second part, when I came to the end of it, it just resolved on its own. I mean, I don't know. The image I'm seeing now is like being sucked down a whirlpool and pulled underwater and being transported, I don't know, like through a wormhole or something. I don't know that it felt that way. I'm just trying to give you some idea of this movement from a place where I thought I was in charge but knew I didn't want to be anymore to a place where I was consciously subordinating this empowered separate self. And the subordination wasn't to just any random energy, it was to God. And it was to the God that I had been building this, more and more intimate relationship with. And at that point, I could feel the divine in my body, in my hands and feet buzzing and tingling when I witnessed people, when I was in my own space, when I was meditating, when I was working on myself, when I was in, didn't mean to knock the mic, when I was in this deep inner space. I could feel God's presence. And I mean, I feel it right now. My hands and feet are buzzing. This is, all these things are going on. All this imagery was showing up all the time. Anyway, when I came out of this process, I was like laughing and crying at the same time. And when I opened my eyes, and I think it was maybe for the first time in, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours or something that I opened my eyes, I could see light. I could see God as light moving through everything. I mean, through the sofa, through the floor, through the coffee table, through my arm, uh, through the dwelling, my friend's place. I could look over at her. I could see energy moving through her. I mean, it was just absolutely mind blowing. And I mean, and I had this experience of unconditional love that I never even approached. It was, God, there's so much more I can say about this, but there's also it's so unnecessary. Um, the process of leading up to that day, the bottom line is that I was suffering so profoundly, and I realized I am the cause of this suffering. This suffering, I am creating this suffering because I think I'm in charge. And that thought, that idea, that behavior, that habit is a stop sign to God, and I'm holding it up in all these areas of my life. I got this, God. I'll tell you what to do. I've got this taken care of. I don't need you. I've got it. And that's what Keating referred to when I interviewed him back in 2017 is the illusion. The thinly veiled illusion is actually what he said. The thinly veiled illusion of free will. Oh, it's like poetry of course, out of the mouth of a mystic, which is exactly what he was. Such a profound insight into that dynamic of in the thinly veiled of the illusion of free will, that dynamic pre-surrender, and then I just got to a place where I was like, look, I'm done suffering. I don't care what the next if the next step is that I'm going to die, okay, fine. Call me home, God. If the next step is I'm an itinerant healer, fine. Put me on the road and show me where to go. If it's homelessness, make me homeless. You guide me. I will do whatever you tell me to do. I am your servant. You lead and I follow. And of course, wouldn't it be amazing if the act of surrender in and of itself was a one-time thing? It's like flipping on a light switch, boop, God, you're in charge, and then that was it. But that's not it. It's a daily, moment by moment practice. It's something we re-encounter again and again and again. That first experience opened the door. That door opening lasted without any kind of sustaining effort, maybe for about 30 days, 45 days. And then, whoom, here comes all this stuff that I think, oh, I'm in charge. I got to control. And then I went, wait a second, that created that. I don't want to go through that again. I'll surrender this. And in many other forms in the years since. Okay. I'm going to open my eyes and see if there are any comments coming on. Fascinating story. Susan says, I'm relieved to hear you think it's fascinating, Susan. Listen, there's no faster way to practice serious vulnerability than to answer things in a completely authentic voice on a live stream on YouTube, no less. Just got to put it out there. You have no idea how anyone's going to respond. Maybe everyone's going to hang up and disconnect. Maybe no one's going to watch. It's okay. This is part of surrendering for me. You know, this wonderful member of the community, I forgot to ask her if I could use her name, and so I'm just leaving her anonymous. I don't want to say a name if I haven't been given permission. She wrote me, I can remember we've had dialogue about this in the past, and many other people have asked me about this as well. But it just brought this forward. I wanted to focus on it today. And but here's the thing. I don't think that there is, a surrender. Somebody asked me for this. I remember I was talking to somebody in the Middle East somewhere. I can't remember exactly what country. This is a number of years ago. And they asked me this question. I said, oh, it's fascinating. So it sounds to me like you're asking if I have a surrender in a box program. And they started laughing and said, yes, do you have surrender in a box? And I said, I've got embodiment of the soul in the box. I've got a visceral experience of wholeness in a box. I have all these practices that God has given to me that I get to steward and teach. And I have these programs and all these things that I offer. I'd love to share these things with you. But let me just tell you the truth. The truth is there is no surrender in a box program. There can't be, because it's your empowered separate self that has to surrender. It's not me witnessing your whole self. What that does is it accelerates surrender. I use the moniker the Soul Archaeologist. A good friend of mine named me that a long time ago. I could just as easily call myself the Surrender Accelerator, because I think that there would be a truth in advertising headline. Anyone who sits in transmission with me is accelerating surrender in their life. You, by being here, are surrendering our accelerating surrender. How is that happening? You may be wondering. Am I pulling strings or something like that? No, I'm not pulling any strings. In fact, I'm not really consciously doing anything. God is just working through me. God's doing whatever God does whenever we sit together and hang out together in this way. But one of the things I realize is that when we open to a deeper experience of who we really are, we have that experience on the one hand, right? And on the other hand, we have these experiences where we think we're in charge. And the contrast between these two gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that process of amplifying those two dynamics, that just happens naturally anytime we hang out, especially if we hang out in class or transmission, community. If you're on YouTube here, you come in and participate in a retreat or the deep dive or any of the things that I do in the sanctuary session, which I've been doing since the fall of 2010, et cetera, et cetera. The surrender accelerator. But here's the thing. You could say, oh, I don't want that. Guess what? It's happening anyway, because in your life, you're moving through a process of uncovering who you really are. And who you really are is this extraordinary expression of divinity. You just don't realize it. Even if you think you're an extraordinary expression of divinity, the idea you have of that, I guarantee, is just a drop in the bucket compared to the truth of it. And it might be a drop in the bucket that has no relationship to the actual experience of divinity as you. You may have these ideas that may have nothing to do with how God expresses through you. It's a mystery that is constantly unfolding and expressing more fully. But here's the thing, that experience, that's just part of life. You're naturally uncovering. You can't help but uncover it. Everything in your life is conspiring to support that experience. It's like the separate and the whole self get together and say, let's have this grand conspiracy here whereby Ken gets to uncover the truth of who Ken is, and so do you. So whether I'm involved in your life or not, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I'd love to be involved in your life. It's an honor to be in. It matters to me. But I'm saying, as relates to the process of surrender, yeah, it might be accelerated a little bit through our work, or massively by our work together, because that experience is even more saturated of who you really are and draws a sharper contrast. But even if we disconnect, even if you say, I don't want anything to do with that guy or anything spiritual, still, it's accelerating because you are living your life. You can't help it. It's how it's unfolding. Okay, Gary's checking in. Wow, awesome and enthusiastic. Thank you much. Lots of love to you. Lots of love to you, Gary. It's wonderful to hear from you. Yeah, surrender, I would say, is one of the things that really, I mean, there are a lot of things that light me up, right? One of the things that lights me up is, and really, I mean, it moves me to tears, to witness another human being having an experience of divinity for the first time. Oh my gosh, makes me weep. It's just moves me so deeply. Another experience is supporting somebody in opening to an experience of their wholeness. Oh my gosh, to witness that, it's incredible. To support another human being in opening up to that place where they're getting ready to surrender. Extraordinary. Opening to their unique gifts, to their divine mission, to their role as a spiritual messenger, to that integration. All these things are so energizing, so profound. And the through line of all of them is letting go of control. This is the one theme that goes through all of it. Letting go of control. Releasing the idea that for life to express to its fullest potential somehow requires you to do something. You got to have a thought. You have to hold it in your head. You have to hold an intention. You're the person creating reality. This is the story of stage 2 consciousness. But there is a bigger, more expanded experience of what is actually real. Divinity is moving through all of us in equal measure. It doesn't matter what we see out in the world. We might see a nightmare unfolding out in the world, right? Remember, contrast between what is actually real and what we think we need to control. That distance could create all sorts of nightmares. I've just shared with you, I suffered mightily in my private interior space because of the gap between that. When we are suffering collectively on the same level, for me, it all distills down to one basic thing. When we encounter that limit, that glass ceiling of stage 2, the things we think we can control, and then the actual experience that is available to us, what we are really opening up to. Susan is sharing something. I'm going to put it up. Haven't even read it yet. Got into an emotional tangle with my partner in a rush to get online with you today. Listening to you, I'm letting it go. LOL. Awesome. Yeah, let it go. Here's the thing. It's a very natural thought. I have it all the time. Let's say that. And I think lots of other people have it through conversations that we have as a community and through work on retreat and all these other things, right? It's perfectly natural. I got to make this better. I got to do something. What do I have to do as a messenger to more perfectly express my message? How can I articulate what my gifts are? If I can't tell people what they are, I'm never ever going to be able to make a living at this, blah, blah, blah. There's all this noise that's going on. These are all projections of the separate self. Here's reality. If you think you understand what the divine is, let go of that. Because if you surrender to what you think you know God to be, then there's going to be a constant disappointment unfolding, right? You surrender to the God you know, it's not surrender. That's surrender to the projection of the separate self. Surrender to the God you don't know. There's a fascinating exercise to the divine mystery, to the unknown future, the unknown divine. Here is this expression waiting to erupt through you more fully on every level of your being in life, if only you'll get out of the way. Oh my goodness, it is liberation beyond anything you can begin to imagine. All right, I got to try to. Oh, here's another comment coming in from Lizzie. Let me put it up here and I'll read it. It's such a personal experience. Thanks. Did your breath lead you into the divine inside? Hmm. Do you mean in the I'm not sure what your question is referring to. Do you mean initially in my experience of opening to the divine? Um, Actually, what opened me to the divine, I mean, I think we're all opening to the divine. I mean, I would try in my narrative of my life, I would say, well, it's a function of going to this event, and this guy told me this and this. But I mean, all that is from my perspective is these people are all messengers of God delivering the message I need to get to the place where I can open up and express my soul's true purpose. On the day of surrender, did breath lead me there? I wasn't doing any kind of conscious breath work. I was just saying, all right, God, this part of my life, I think I've been in charge with. I'm getting up and I'm walking to the back of the bus and I am letting it go. I'm no longer going to hold on anymore. I'm not going to even try to steer this. And you lead me wherever you lead me. I will follow. It does not matter. And I will tell you, the guidance that has unfolded since then, a lot of it makes absolutely no rational sense whatsoever. It doesn't make any sequencing sense. That's what I mean by that is the way that we live our lives. Generally, we construct things, we human beings, certainly I have done this. Maybe you don't do this, but I've done this. I'm going to do it in this order. I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. Oftentimes, my guidance has been, yep, those things sure are important, aren't they? Just focus on this and ignore the rest of this. Or this thing that's been so important that you've been developing, just drop that and focus on this thing that's way more important, but ostensibly has absolutely nothing to do with making a living. Go do that full time for the next year or two. Go be in there. And here's the thing, if there's any resistance showing up, at least this is how I interpret it, I look at that and I go, oh, here's my separate self showing up to integrate at a deeper level. So if my buttons are getting pushed, something showing up to integrate, then I celebrate that and open more fully to who I am over and over and over again. All right. I'm just going to calm down, stop this dance of surrender. There's nothing wrong with the dance, but for me, it's the balance of the words and the story. I'm honored to share these with you. Grateful for the chance to connect in this way. Hoping, trusting really that sharing in this way somehow is serving you in your journey, in your spiritual journey, in opening to a deeper intimacy with the divine. But for me, if all we ever did was explore like this and we didn't go in a little bit deeper, it would feel incomplete to me. Because from my perspective, when we can anchor these words, these ideas with an experience for which we have no language, oh my goodness, it's so much more interesting than anything that could ever be said by anyone, certainly by me. And I'd love to open to that experience with you. So I'm just going to pause. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay for getting comments. If there are any other questions anyone else wants to check in, but we're going to go into deeper transmission. I'll drop language here and we'll sit together at a deeper level. Just make sure the microphone's working well. I'll open my eyes here in just a moment. Generally, at this point in our community circle, I do a little commercial for how I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel and like the video and all of that. And I would, but I want to tell you, um, there's a piece to this that I'm just here's my separate self right now. Okay, my separate self is saying, oh, but you need to do these things because remember, it's all we got to support the algorithm, blah 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 blah. But here's the deeper part of me. My whole self is just going, if people want to subscribe, they will, and probably reminding is either it resonates or it doesn't. The thumbs up is happening or it's not, and just just let go of the control. See, even now, here, let go of the control. I accepted that it was time to start live streaming. Thank goodness my good friend John Paduchek, who'd been telling me, you got to live stream for years, literally been saying to me, Ken, we got to do this. We got to do this. I called him up. I said, John, I think it's time. I'm going to stop resisting. Thank goodness. Thank God. Thank John that he helped me make that transition. And here we are. And so each step into this process is just a step further into surrender for me. I have no idea what's going to happen next. I have no idea. Some weeks the video goes out. Some weeks I mute the line and there's no audio there. And then people are commenting, there's no audio. And by the time I become aware of it, I laugh hysterically because I think, oh my goodness, what a great reminder of the importance of surrender. Getting on video initially, it was like, oh, what do I look like? And now I just think, what does it matter? We're here. Let's have this experience. If you feel drawn to it, let's have it together. Okay, let's see. Okay, Lizzie says thanks. That answers it. Awesome. Okay. All right. Let's set all these words aside. Let's drop language. Let's do a little bit of breathing and move into deeper transmission. Listen, if this is your first time and you're like, what's transmission? What's happening? From my perspective, I'm having an experience of witnessing everyone who's sitting in this circle right now. This circle, meaning the circle of people who are watching, participating, listening. And right now it's going out on my YouTube channel. I think it's also going out on Twitter. Those are the two places right now that this is going out. And it's available on replay. And I actually can't differentiate between the people who hear this in 10 years from now or 2 days from now or now. It's all now from my perspective. It's all happening now. So I'm just having an experience sitting with you whenever now is for you. And I want to honor that by stopping verbally communicating and just sink in. And maybe that's uncomfortable for you. And if it is, you can just remind yourself with each breath, you are connected to everyone and everything, the divine, the light, the twin frequencies, connecting into each of the smallest aspects of you, known and unknown. The river is flowing. And if you're comfortable with the silence, maybe it's been going on for almost an hour already. And amen if that is the case, because absolutely nothing that I've said is more important than whatever is unfolding in your inner experience, in that most intimate relationship and experience of the innate connection that exists between you and God. Deep breath in, hold, and as you release the breath, open further. Pull your fingers out of the dam. Let the floodwaters of divine presence wash over you, through you, in you, and as you. The river is flowing. Be the river. Be. At any time the thought comes up, well, what do I need to do to capitalize on that insight or integrate more of that resonance that I'm feeling or open more fully to God's expression through me? Just remind yourself with each breath, the river is flowing, and let go of the idea that you need to do anything. The more you let go, the more fully the divine expresses. Because as you get out of the way, as you stop holding up that stop sign, you unkink the hose, the flow of divine grace, of divine love, of divine presence in you, through you, and as you, in every part of your life. How do you know if you've surrendered? You accept everything exactly as it is. Suffering exists when we live in the gap between what is and what we hope, want, or desire. Suffering ends when we're completely present no matter what. And that's how you know you've surrendered. You accept it fully as it is right now. If any noise comes up, any dissonance, feel it fully, be with it. If it's the noise of projection or memory, you can remind yourself very simply with each breath, you are connected and the river is flowing. If the discomfort emotionally or physically returns, instead of resisting it or trying to breathe it away, welcome it in. Allow it to amplify. Allow it to consume you. Feel it fully. For in your embodied presence is an extraordinary opportunity for divine alchemy. One implement or one instrument, one aspect of that alchemy is your embodied soul, which happens when we sit together. and the other is to feel fully whatever is coming up. So feel it fully and allow it to transmute. When it does, the present, the gift that is unwrapped, that is contained within that separate expression, that discomfort, is unwrapped and then integrated and then expressed as part of your whole being. The resource of that aspect of your whole self becomes part of your whole self, a resource that previously was not available to you because it was still held in separation. And with this more complete expression of who you are, so too a more complete expression of the divine mystery as you. And the river flows on and on and on and on. The river is flowing. So beautiful. So beautiful. I would love to go even deeper with you. If you're interested in doing that, there's a link in the description, and you could join a really extraordinary group of people that gather every other week for a deep dive virtual retreat. We do Thursdays and Saturdays every other week. Thursday is a longer retreat, usually 3 to 4 hours. It includes some teaching, big long transmission, and a conversation, a Q&A. It's really incredible, the conversations that show up there. And then we alternate on the Saturday. Every other Saturday is a Q&A, an extended conversation, and then the others are bonus transmission. So the next one's coming up on the 13th of August, which happens to be my 50th birthday. And I'm going to celebrate it with the Deep Dive Retreat Group And if you'd like to be part of that, I'd love to welcome you into it. There's a link in the description if you want to learn more. It would be an honor to have you be part of the Deep Dive Circle. It truly is an extraordinary group of people. We do such amazing work together, have extraordinary conversations. It would be an incredible honor for you to join us in that experience if you feel called to be part of that group. And whether you feel called or not, it's such an honor to sit with you today, to explore in this way, to be, to resonate, to sit together as a community here just about every week. Next week, we won't be gathering. I'll be back in 2 weeks with you. If there's anything else coming up, I'll check in here with comments here in just a minute. But I really, really want to thank you for being present, for showing up. Every once in a while, I forget to share the details from my heart email about this gathering. So I'll just tell you now. It's just about every Wednesday. Some Wednesdays not, but most Wednesdays at 5 Eastern time is the live event. And you've heard there are lots of people checking in, asking questions, reflecting, zeroing in on things. I respond to emails. Every once in a while, an email shows up that just, here's our theme for the next one. And I just really welcome the opportunity to sit with you. For me, it's such a treat, such an honor. What I've shared with you today about my journey in surrender, it's all the truth. It's not some fluffed and buffed version of the truth. It really is. And each day that I have an opportunity to be in the world in this way as a spiritual messenger, supporting other messengers, other people who are opening up to that deeper experience of the divine within, I feel so blessed, so honored to have the opportunity to do that with you, to make my living in this way, to go exploring, and for the profound and deep privilege and honor of witnessing you as you really are, as an undistorted expression and extension of divinity. So thank you for making yourself part of this circle, part of this community. There are lots of other ways we can connect, lots of links to other resources and so on in the description below. I'm going to just check in and see if there's anyone else checking in. Oh, Gary says hi over Twitter. Thanks for saying hi on Twitter, Gary. So amazing. Joanne, thank you for being here. What an honor to be with you. Before we conclude, let me just remind you and invite you to please return that universal plug. I'll do the same as I bring this transmission to a close. Thank you for being part of this circle. Thank you for participating through the comments. Thank you for commenting on replay, for sharing as it resonates with you, for subscribing, liking, and doing all those things if you feel called to do that. And thank you for showing up and allowing the divine to express through you. There are unique gifts that are only available to the world because they are the divine expression as you. And what an honor it is to watch that blossom and express more fully through you. Until we're together again. Oh, here's Judy saying, yes, awesome. Great to be with you, Judy. Again, thanks for checking in. Wonderful to be with you today. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to being back with you. If you're in the Deep Dive Circle or you're joining, I'll see you next Thursday on the day I turn 50. Woohoo! And if not, I'll see you in a couple of weeks when we gather again for our virtual gatherings. Thanks so much for being part of it. Peace. We'll see you soon. Oops, I got to remember where's my mouse? I can't end. I don't know. Oh, here, the mouse is over on the other screen. Now I can. Okay, I'll see you in a couple of weeks or next week. Peace.